Amazing revelation. After 7 minutes outside, a black pilotess transformation fired the entire crew. Marcus Carter stood outside the terminal at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, the sun beating down like an unrelenting spotlight on his black uniform. Frustration bubbled just below the surface as he recalled the wave of disappointment from his flight crew moments ago, a reprimand for a minor miscommunication during the pre-flight check. Again, this cycle of prejudice dug at him, reminding him of the countless times he had faced down similar judgments since his career began. It was a common thread woven through the fabric of his profession, a world where merit was not always enough to earn respect. He took a deep breath, letting the heat wrap around him, gradually overpowering his apprehension. With every inhalation, memories flickered in his mind. His parents toiling at 2 jobs each, sacrificing anything they could for him to reach for the skies literally and figuratively. They had always emphasized grit, never allowing doubt to creep into his heart. Yet here he was, battling not only the skies but also an invisible enemy manifested in the doubting eyes of those who shared his cockpit. He paced the pavement, tracing the outlines of their harsh words. Another reprimand, another dismissal. An uneasy tide of anger clashed against waves of doubt. He longed to push them aside but couldn't shake their sting. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Walking back inside, Marcus felt an intensity building within him. He seized control as he climbed into the cockpit, igniting a fire deep in the pit of his stomach. This flight would be different. It was time to assert his skill, to refuse the lingering shadow of doubt. Tension gripped the atmosphere as they climbed into the sky, but he focused, determined to lead without humiliation tainting his actions. Suddenly, an alarm jolted him from concentration, a critical system failure. The plane jolted, and within that moment, panic began to seep through the cockpit walls. But in a surge of clarity, Marcus unleashed his extensive training. He guided the crew through emergency protocols with a confidence that silenced their uncertain murmurs. In those dire seconds, the dynamic of the cockpit twisted. The crew's gaze shifted from skepticism to something resembling respect. But as the plane stabilized and the chaos ebbed, a quiet anguish settled in. Could he forgive those who had underestimated him? Their evolving perceptions tugged at his thoughts, forcing them into confrontation, as heavy realizations settled like stones in their hearts. As they landed, Marcus faced his colleagues, their expressions a mix of uncertainty and regret. Anger clashed against a desire for reconciliation within him. Should he choose mercy for those who doubted him or demand respect for himself and his family's sacrifices? A deafening silence loomed over the cockpit, charged with a question that held the power to divide or unite. Could he unearth a pathway toward understanding, or would this moment become the catalyst that solidified the bitter divide? The tension weighted him as he looked into their eyes. They were searching for resolution while he battled an internal war. The air in the cockpit hung thick with unresolved tension as Marcus sought to navigate not just the aircraft modes, but interpersonal minefields. The murmurs subsided, replaced by an awkward stillness, like the calm before a storm. He clenched the yoke, channeling the flutter of his heartbeat into a sense of purpose. Could he foster a dialogue among the crew? Could he reshape perceptions? Or was it too late? Listen. He began, voice steady but edged with the gravity of the moment. That alarm was a wake-up call not just for our systems but for us as a team. We can't afford to doubt each other, especially when lives depend on it. His gaze swept over the crew. He saw varied expressions: curiosity, hesitation, even shame mixed with the remnants of skepticism. Are we just going to skirt around our problems? He pressed on, heart pounding in defiance against his doubts. Every time I step into this cockpit, I'm facing the weight of your skepticism. But that fuels me. I know I'm not just fighting for my seat. I'm fighting for all the pilots who look like me. For a brief moment, the room was electric. He could sense the shift in atmosphere, the unspoken understanding taking shape. But could he trust it? Marcus dropped his head momentarily, gathering his thoughts, and when he looked back up, he continued, "We can only take flight together. If you have doubts, let us address them. But if we want to support one another, we might as well be in the clouds without instruments." One crew member shifted uncomfortably, breaking the silence. "You're right, Marcus. We've all been on edge. Maybe it's time we let go of our biases and just be a team." That moment shone like a beacon. It was a fragile bridge, one that could either support their shared growth or leave him standing on shaky ground. It stirred something within Marcus, a blend of hope and caution. Could they reconcile their past grievances enough to craft a forward path? As they aired grievances, a sense of camaraderie began to take shape amid the turbulence of revelations. Personal stories spilled forth, fears and misunderstandings tethered to judgments that were now being reevaluated. One crew member admitted he had stood in awe of Marcus's flying, but hadn't known how to express it. Another confessed the weight of expectation and perceived judgments had clouded their ability to see his true capabilities. And amongst these admissions, Marcus found clarity within himself. They weren't merely colleagues. They were players in a shared narrative of progress, evolving individually while entwined in a professionally charged atmosphere. He realized this could be the turning point he longed for, not just for them but for him too. He felt a glimmer of self-acceptance in their unfolding respect, igniting the belief that he was worthy of his place above the clouds. Yet, as the conversation unfolded, doubt still lingered at the edges of Marcus's mind. What would happen once the flight was over? Would those conversations devolve back into glances of skepticism, or would this moment redefine their relationships? All these unknowns managed to dance in his thoughts, fueling an evolving determination within him as the plane cruised smoothly. A challenge loomed on the horizon. The upcoming landing would put everything Marcus had started to the test. Would the crew's newfound bond withstand the pressure under which they were about to operate? He steeled himself for the moment. The time had come to face the true measure of their growth together. As the plane descended towards the runway, Marcus felt a palpable tension in the air, an electric charge that overshadowed the earlier camaraderie. This was the ultimate test of unity that could quickly unravel or cement their progress. He recognized his own heartbeat racing in rhythm with the descent, yet it was more than just adrenaline. It was a steep plunge into vulnerability that could either transform or tarnish their fragile connections. "Prepare for landing," he announced, his voice cutting through the silence, filled with an authority that belied his inner turmoil. The crew responded with mechanical efficiency, but beneath that professionalism lay the pervasive grit of unspoken anxieties and expectations, both his and theirs. Marcus's fingers tightened around the yoke, a physical manifestation of his determination to steer not only the aircraft but also the dynamics of the team. He exhaled slowly, aware that this moment required clarity. "You all know the protocols. We've practiced these landings 100 times. Trust in your training. Trust in each other." As the aircraft pierced through the final clouds, flashes of memories danced through his mind. The early days of learning to fly, the taste of failure, and the triumph of success amidst relentless judgment. Would his newfound resolve be enough to navigate through this critical juncture? Could he keep the threads of trust woven tightly together as they approached a potential crisis? The cockpit hum turned into a symphony of focused activity, sound and light abstracting together as his team executed their duties. It was in that focused environment that Marcus began to feel an inexplicable sense of belonging and a deeper confidence within himself. He could sense their trust growing, step by step, elevating from mere words of encouragement to a palpable belief in one another's abilities. Then, the descent steepened, and suddenly alarms blared. A system malfunction erupted like thunder in the small environment. Panic surged briefly among the crew, a reminder that fear could twist their unity. "Marcus, we lost pressure in engine 2, shouted an engineer, eyes wide, fingers poised over controls. Without missing a beat, Marcus immediately grasped the situation. "Stay calm. Identify the problem and prepare to compensate." His voice rang out with clarity, grounded in the belief not just in his training, but in the crew that now operated as one unit rather than disparate parts. He took a deep breath, suppressing his own anxiety, as he initiated emergency procedures, focusing on executing what they had practiced. Communication is key. Talk me through it. Instinctively, he made eye contact with each team member, a nonverbal assurance that reinforced their collective strength as they worked in concert. Marcus marveled at the transformation. They weren't just reacting to a crisis. They were a cohesive unit, driven by shared experiences and mutual respect, a reflection of the conversations they'd begun to foster within those tense hours. With deft maneuvers, they stabilized the aircraft, guiding it safely towards the runway. The relief washed over him like a wave. They had not just survived, but had thrived together under pressure. Even as they landed, he felt an echo of uncertainty. Had they truly moved beyond the ghosts of their past? Or would the doubts once again rear their heads? The challenge of sustaining this newfound bond awaited him beyond the cockpit doors. As the aircraft came to a halt, a moment of silence enveloped them. Before the crew erupted into applause, grins wide, a collective relief pulsating through them. Yet before he could bask in that triumph, Marcus sensed a shift. Someone approaching from the back, an unfamiliar figure whose expression darkened the mood. "This is not over, Marcus," said the voice he recognized as Mike's, one of his closest skeptics. "We need to talk." A chill crept in, leaving Marcus to wonder if this triumph would quickly unravel, or if it was another chance for true personal and professional growth. His heart raced. What challenge awaited him now? Mike approached with a tense demeanor, his footsteps echoing against the cockpit walls as Marcus felt the weight of expectancy looming over him. What lay within those words was tangible and raw, a confrontation that could peel back layers, exposing vulnerabilities that he had only just begun to fortify. This was not only about aviation. It was a reckoning of their interpersonal relations, remnants from days filled with doubt and discord. "Marcus," he started, his tone oscillating between frustration and urgency. "You can't just brush everything under the rug like it didn't happen. Tensions are still high, and I saw how the others reacted in there. They're still unsure." Marcus's throat tightened. He had felt their bond forming, stitching together the frayed edges left by years of skepticism and strife. Had he misread the situation? "We worked together today, Mike. I believed we grew closer. That unity was palpable." "Unity?" Mike's voice edged with disbelief. "Unity doesn't come from a single flight. Takes time, trust, and clear communication. We can't just celebrate one success and ignore the underlying issues." Marcus clenched his fists, caught between the instinct to defend his perspective and a growing realization that Mike held a point. Critical issues still loomed and could ignite at any moment. "What do you suggest then?" he queried, challenging himself to remain open. Mike crossed his arms, reflecting a defensive posture that mirrored Marcus's inner turmoil. "We need to talk through our past, not pretending it all evaporated when the wheels hit the ground. We've got to confront what happened before, or we'll never talk as a team. It'll always be an individual struggle." The air between them thickened with unacknowledged histories, unshared burdens. Marcus understood that the camaraderie built in those harrowing moments could easily dissolve under scrutiny if he didn't address this. "What I need from you, Mike, is a plan," he said, a calculated clarity shining through his trepidation. "If we're going to confront this, I need your partnership, not just criticism. Help me navigate this." As Mike considered the request, Marcus felt the weight of responsibility deepen. This was not merely about proving his worth, but about fostering an environment fortified by open dialogue and authentic relationships. It occurred to him that this was an opportunity to redefine not just his leadership but the very fabric of the team's dynamics. "Fine," Mike finally relented. "But we start with the issues from our last flight. We identify who feels what and why. It's not comfortable, but if we're serious about moving forward, we need to lay all cards on the table." A hint of apprehension washed over Marcus. This wasn't just a professional endeavor. It was a personal confrontation that could unearth grievances he had hoped to leave behind. Yet he sensed a vital truth in Mike's proposition: transformation often required upheaval. "Let us do it then," Marcus said, a volatile mix of anxiety and determination surging within him. We'll set a time for an open dialogue with the crew. No holds barred. We'll air everything out. As the plan solidified, a spark of hope emerged within him, accounting for the vulnerability that now seemed inevitable but necessary. Perhaps it was the cracks in their relationships that would lead to a deeper resolution, a fusion of personal growth and professional resilience that could transform the team into something much stronger. But as he walked away, a nagging doubt loomed. Were they truly ready for such exposure? Would the ghosts of their past surfacing sear through the tentative bonds they forged? Marcus reached for his phone, the weight of impending conversations resting heavily on his shoulders as he scheduled the discussion. A shiver traced his spine. This was merely the beginning. The true test awaited, and only by confronting their inner conflicts could they emerge unified or forever fractured. What revelations would surface from this confrontation? And would the trust they had begun to establish withstand the scrutiny of true vulnerability? The day of the scheduled dialogue arrived with a weightiness that hung in the air. Marcus sat alone in the break room, the soft hum of the coffee maker providing a thin veil over the rising tension within him. Today was his chance to instigate real change, yet a heaviness in his gut reminded him that vulnerability demanded more than just words. It required the courage to face unheeded emotions and unspoken truths. He glanced at the clock, noting his heartbeat's rhythm matching the ticking hands as it edged closer to the meeting time. Would anyone actually be willing to share? A dawning fear emerged. What if, in the quest for openness, he inadvertently kindled old resentments rather than bridged gaps? The influx of doubt sent a wave of sweat cascading down his back. Marcus took a deep breath, attempting to calm the storm whirling inside. He had made a commitment, and now was not the time to waver. Rising from the table, he moved to the conference room where the rest of the crew would soon arrive. It was as if he stepped into an arena, and he would have to fight, firsthand, the internal battles they all carried. As the crew filed in, he sensed various undercurrents, nervous glances, the shuffling of feet, and the rustle of clothes. Each face reflected uncertainty, yet flickers of hope intertwined with it. They were on the precipice of something significant. Marcus cleared his throat. "Thank you for being here today," he began, his voice steadier than he felt. "We're here to talk, to truly communicate.
No veils, no filters.
Let us uncover what has been affecting us and see if we can move forward together." Before he could finish, Mike leaned forward, his brows knit. "Let us be honest. It's not just about our last flight. It's everything how we let past grievances dictate our dynamic," he stated. Evidently the floodgates had opened. "I'm tired of pretending we're fine when we're not." The others nodded, some murmuring in agreement. Marcus felt as if a dam had burst, releasing pent-up emotions. He took a steadying breath, grounding himself. "Okay then," he said, "let us extract the specifics. Who has something to share first?" A heavy silence fell. Shadows darted in the unspoken words that lingered, teetering on the edge of being voiced. Finally, Clara, a junior pilot with a reputation for being quiet, broke the silence. I often feel dismissed in the cockpit. When we are all deciding things, my input sometimes feels like an afterthought," she admitted, her voice trembling. Marcus's heart sank as he realized how deeply entrenched the division was, something he had subconsciously hoped wasn't there. "Thank you for being brave enough to say that, Clara. What can we do differently?" The eyes of the crew turned to Clara for cues. She swallowed, gaining strength from their focus. "I want us to all be included, to have a real say in how we fly as a team. We all have something to contribute, and each contribution matters." With that, a ripple of discussions broke out. Others began opening up. They spoke about frustration, fear, and miscommunications that clouded their collaborations. Every revelation, once deemed too risky for exposure, transformed into a bridge to understanding one another more deeply. Emotions surged as Mike shared an episode when he felt undermined by decisions made without consultation. Marcus listened intently, understanding now the disconnection that he had been partly responsible for perpetuating. As the dialogue unfolded, Marcus recognized that his initial intention to foster accountability and trust had digressed into a communal unveiling of vulnerability. They were going deeper than he ever imagined. But as the room grew warmer with empathy, Marcus realized that while they were making strides toward healing, he had yet to confront his own fears, the very ones that held him back from true leadership. What were those insecurities that latched onto him? What truths still waited in the shadows, hidden even from himself? Marcus's breath quickened. The surge of feedback uncovered layers of his history he'd avoided. The moment of truth was no longer the external confrontation but an internal one that awaited him, revealing potential no one had seen before. Would he be able to confront the emotional barricades that had held him captive for too long? Could his own transformation yield a significant impact on the team as a whole? The journey was barely begun, yet the stakes felt alarmingly high. As the meeting began to wind down, a sense of impending revelations loomed in the air, gripping Marcus's thoughts. The real work often lurked in the shadows, and he could sense that it was time for him to illuminate his own. What were the dimensions of his own vulnerabilities, and how would they shape the man he was determined to become? As the meeting drew to a close, Marcus sensed the warmth of connection softly enveloping the room, a stark contrast to the chill he had felt just moments before. The crew, now engaged in spirited discussion, had peeled back layers of resentment and fear, exposing raw truths. Yet, amidst the shared vulnerability, Marcus wrestled with a brewing storm within himself. He made his way to the window, the sunlight glancing off the horizon as he stared out, contemplating the significance of what just transpired. Each word exchanged had lifted a weight, but it was his own internal dialogue that threatened to pull him back into shadows he thought he had left behind. Why was it so easy for others to articulate their grievances while he struggled to confront his own insecurities? A wave of apprehension crashed over him. He realized he had focused on others' frustrations, their contributions, but what of his own? Was he truly ready to embrace his imperfections in the same way he expected of his team? As clarity dawned, he felt the edges of frustration begin to sharpen. He had led them through an exercise of inspection into vulnerability, but his own heart remained encased in indifference. The disconnection might very well mirror the very dynamics he sought to dissolve. Taking a deep breath, he decided to address the crew once more. "We've made progress today, and I appreciate all of you for your courage," he began, his voice trembling slightly but resolute. "But I realize I have not fully participated in this sharing. Vulnerability is a two-way street, and I owe you all my truth." Echoes of surprise rippled through the room, eyes wide as they all turned to him, waiting. "I've held onto an image of strength for so long. I've been hesitant to show any cracks in my armor, fearing it would diminish the leadership I aim to instill," he continued, his heart pounding with each word. "But I've come to understand that my journey is not just about guiding others. It's about honesty, resilience, and confronting the fear that has lingered in the corners of my existence." Sweat trickled down his brow as he recalled moments where he felt unprepared or overly scrutinized. "There have been times I doubted my position. My authority feels like an imposter at times, clashing with the fear of making decisions that might mitigate our success. And that doubt has held me back from fostering true collaboration among you all." He paused, watching the crew absorb his confession. It was as if the walls of silence that had encircled him began to crumble. "I want to grow from this. I want to allow you all to see me not just as your leader but as someone striving to better himself, transparent and open." An unexpected stirring emerged, a willingness to confront their own hesitations mingled with his release. The crew began to signal unspoken confirmation, a breakthrough not only for Marcus but for everyone present. He sensed a shift, finding strength in their shared experiences while his previous fears slipped slightly away. As the meeting finally concluded, relief washed over him, laced with trepidation. Could the commitment he just made manifest a ripple effect in the team's transformation? What were the potential ramifications of his newfound resolve? Would they accept this vulnerable version of him, or would it leave them wary? With each step towards the exit, determination took root alongside doubt. He felt propelled towards a greater horizon. Was this the beginning of a path of genuine leadership? The moment of camaraderie had shifted perceptions but brought with it an undercurrent of unease for what lay ahead. Outside, the world continued as it always had, blissfully unaware of his inner conflict. Marcus pulled his phone from his pocket and swiped through an article featuring a black pilot. His story of transformation sparking heated discussions on resilience within their industry. He felt a stirring within himself, a desire to structure not just his journey but to foster change and growth among all his colleagues. No matter the cost. In that moment he was hit with a revelation. He would reach out to this pilot, to learn from his journey, to share ideas and possibly foster a more profound sense of understanding among their peers. The thought excited him, igniting a flame of hope and ambition. Yet questions hovered palpably over him. Would his vulnerability yield the transformation he sought? Would he, too, become a catalyst in the narratives that surrounded their profession? Or would his own burdens cloud his capacity to lead? As he walked away, Marcus felt both free and burdened, caught between the past and an uncertain future. The time had come to face not only his fears but to embrace the possibilities they presented. Would moving forward require facing adversaries, both within and professional? His heart raced, the journey just beginning, and he was ready to step into the unknown. The following days unfolded with an ebb and flow of excitement and anxiety for Marcus. Each morning was a new canvas streaked with both anticipation and fear. The prospect of reaching out to the pilot gnawed at him, eliciting both a fierce determination and a paralyzing self-doubt. He scheduled a call, only to find himself canceling it at the last minute. What if this act of vulnerability backfired? What if the pilot dismissed him as just another leader seeking surface-level validation? The questions circled relentlessly in his mind. Each time he contemplated dialing the number, he envisioned an outcome where he remained trapped within an echo chamber of his own insecurities. At the same time, Marcus recognized the ironies in his hesitation. He had just challenged his team to dismantle their own walls of fear, yet here he was erecting a fortress of doubt. This self-reflection ignited a fire under him. He was in a battle against the very traits he had hoped to abandon. In the midst of this wrestling, he decided to pen a letter instead, detailing his past struggles and aspirations for change. In the process, he found clarity and purpose emerge through the written word. The act of drafting the letter isolated some of the swirling thoughts in his mind. He felt detached from the relentless, nagging insecurities. Writing laid bare his ambitions and illuminated the direct correlation between his vulnerabilities and his aspirations for growth, both for himself and for others. Finally, after days of deliberation, he pressed send. As it departed into the ether, he felt an unexpected sense of lightness replace the burden he had been carrying. The weight of uncertainty began to lift, replaced by a resolve. He was choosing to embrace his vulnerability instead of denying it. Days turned into weeks, and he shifted his focus back to the team. The light-hearted interactions, previously clouded with unease, began to bloom. Conversations were now punctuated by levity, yet there remained an undercurrent of sincerity that had not existed before. Marcus skillfully guided discussions, posing thoughtful questions that fostered deeper introspection and engagement. With each workshop he facilitated, he felt unshackled, contributing to the palpable shift in the team's dynamics. They were emerging as collaborators, deeply involved with one another's journeys. Then one afternoon, as he exited the training room, his phone buzzed with an incoming message. It was from the pilot. As Marcus read the response, the emotions that surged through him were visceral, a dizzying mix of relief and validation. The pilot expressed eagerness to connect, to share experiences and insights. Not only had the pilot agreed to a meeting, but he also commended Marcus for taking the first step, mentioning how rare it was for leaders to publicly admit their struggles. This revelation altered Marcus's perspective once more. What if his vulnerability had the power to inspire others beyond just his team? He realized this wasn't merely about his growth. It was about creating ripples that could foster change throughout their industry. His mind raced with possibilities. He envisioned a series of collaborative discussions with not only the pilot but also other leaders within their field, encouraging a culture in which transparency was celebrated rather than feared. Yet, with this exhilarating realization came another wave of self-doubt. Was he fully prepared to be an agent of change? What if he stumbled while trying to elevate others? He stood at a crucial intersection, vibrant opportunities looming ahead, but shadows of trepidation lingered in his mind as he paced the floor of his office. The weight of what lay before him settled uncomfortably on his shoulders. Would he be able to foster this culture of authenticity? Could he sustain his vulnerability while guiding others through their struggles? Or would the very act of doing so unravel the progress he had made? The moment of profound realization collided with hesitation as he locked eyes with his reflection in the glass. A man caught between his aspiration for growth and the fear of faltering. Yet the stakes felt monumental now. He was compelled towards action, driven by a stirring commitment to revolutionize not only his path, but potentially others' journeys as well. With new resolve, he prepared for the next steps that awaited him in the unknown. Just then, another notification chimed on his phone. The pilot wanted to meet next week. Marcus's heart quickened. The apparent simplicity of the invitation cast a revealing light. What lay ahead wasn't just about meeting expectations, but rather about facing the depths of authenticity head-on. As he closed his eyes, taking a long, deep breath, he realized one undeniable truth. Profound transformation awaited, but first, the time had come for him to confront the depths of his own leadership and resilience. What challenges would arise from this meeting, and how would it propel Marcus down an unforeseen path? As the week unfolded, Marcus felt anxiety intertwining with his palpable excitement. Days passed with each tick of the clock, evolving from mere anticipation into a critical weight pressing against his chest. The meeting with the pilot was not just a scheduled call. It was a confrontation with the very essence of who he wanted to be as a leader. He reviewed his notes multiple times, each word a remnant of his evolving thoughts on vulnerability and authenticity. What once felt like frivolous exploration of concepts was now a lifeline. He needed to ensure his words resonated, not just with the pilot, but also echoed into the future changes he hoped to inspire within his team and beyond. Every detail mattered: the setting, the tone, the authenticity of his delivery. Marcus meticulously selected a cafe known for its welcoming atmosphere. He wanted to create an environment that felt conducive to genuine connection, one that would set both of them at ease. He arrived early, surveying the space. It felt like he was preparing for a stage performance where each act carried the weight of his aspirations. Sitting there, he let his mind wander back to his team's growth. He recalled how their discussions had shifted from surface-level engagements to moments steeped in honesty, how one shared story could shatter an unspoken barrier, how other leaders viewed vulnerability as a weakness had never made sense to him. Yet, here he was, clinging to the same misconceptions even as he preached the opposite. As the minutes dragged on, his self-doubt crept in like shadows stealing the sun. What if the pilot questioned his intentions? What if he wasn't ready to face someone who had navigated his own vulnerabilities? Marcus took a breath, envisioning all the conversations that could emerge from this meeting, and each one revitalized his focus. The pilot could be a catalyst for systemic change, but only if he embraced this moment fully. When the door opened, the atmosphere shifted once more. In walked the pilot, exuding a quiet confidence, his demeanor a blend of grounded resilience and professional poise. Marcus immediately sensed the ripples of potential between them. They were two men in different worlds, yet their paths intersected at the poignant crossroads of vulnerability and authenticity. As they settled into their seats, the initial pleasantries flowed naturally, like a gentle stream finding its path. Then, something shifted in Marcus. He recalled the essence of his letter, the openness he had laid bare to a stranger not long ago, and decided to lead with that same authenticity. He shared his journey, his battles against self-doubt, and his desire to inspire others to lean into their vulnerabilities without fear. To his surprise, the pilot nodded, a knowing smile breaking across his face as he listened intently. They dove deep into conversations about leadership, pressures, and the intrinsic challenges of their respective roles. With each shared experience, Marcus felt a fire igniting within him. The pilot's stories resonated powerfully, each word illuminating the threads that connected them. Then came a challenge. The pilot, with a penetrating gaze, asked the question Marcus had feared most. What if vulnerability isn't a destination, but rather an endless journey? Are you ready to embrace that uncertainty? The weight of those words shifted Marcus. Vulnerability was not a one-time display. It was a perpetual state of being, one that would require continued courage and authenticity. Suddenly, everything crystallized for Marcus. This journey was not solely about carving out a new path for himself but rather leading others to navigate their own uncertainties. He was no longer merely an actor on the stage. He was a guide, a fellow traveler in the labyrinth of personal growth. That moment sealed a pact between him and the pilot, two leaders embarking on a mission bigger than themselves. This was about crafting an ethos surrounding authenticity in leadership, a transformative force to breach the barriers holding people back in their careers. As they parted ways, Marcus's thoughts raced forward, now fully aware of the profound journey that lay ahead. The pilot had ignited a new conviction within him, a sense of urgency to catalyze change at a systemic level. What would be the culmination of this newfound partnership? How would it impact his team, and could it ripple outwards to others in the industry? With renewed purpose driving him, Marcus felt like he was standing on the precipice of something monumental. As he glanced at his phone, he noticed an email notification. It was a request for him to speak at an upcoming leadership forum. The invitation felt like an expanding horizon, another opportunity laden with uncharted possibilities. What if this was just the beginning of an extraordinary movement? With a newfound determination, Marcus recognized that each step forward carried the potential for breakthroughs, not just for himself, but for others awaiting inspiration. He was ready to dive deeper, but first, what would he articulate in his next public address? The stakes were higher now. Could he find the right words to ignite a broader discussion? Marcus stared at the blinking cursor on his screen, a pulse of uncertainty throbbing through his veins. The invitation to speak at the leadership forum loomed over him like a storm brewing on the horizon. Questions swirled, unrelenting in their assault. What should he say? How could he encapsulate the essence of what he had learned, especially after that transformative conversation with the pilot? He pushed back from the desk, frustration creeping in. Taking a moment to breathe, he leaned against the wall and turned his attention to the cafe where they had met. The harmonious blend of voices, the rich aroma of coffee, and the sun filtering through the windows had created a sanctuary for authentic dialogue. He had felt brave, vulnerable, a stark contrast to the doubts that had clung to him weeks before. Returning to his laptop, Marcus opened a new document and began to jot down the main themes that had emerged from his meeting with the pilot. Authenticity, vulnerability, the continuous journey of personal growth. Each bullet point felt like a thread, weaving a tapestry of his evolving narrative as a leader. He questioned himself fiercely. Was he ready to expose the rawness of his own insecurities to a broader audience? As he hammered out sentences with determination, a memory emerged, one of the late nights spent in a hotel room, poring over leadership books and scribbled notes. Even then, vulnerability felt like a distant concept, more theory than practice. He reflected on his initial experiences leading the team, how he had clung to the facade of unwavering confidence, convinced that exposing weakness would dismantle his credibility. The pilot's question echoed in his mind. How serious was he about embracing this endless journey? With each tap of the keys, Marcus confronted his fear head-on. He decided to embrace personal anecdotes, moments that revealed the depths of his journey, rather than polished success stories. This would not be a speech designed for applause, but rather a raw and real sharing that could resonate with others grappling with their own fears. Suddenly, a gnawing thought stalled his momentum. Would he be seen as merely vulnerable, or would his openness invite transformation? It ignited an internal struggle. He could already imagine the audience's mixed reactions, some embracing the authenticity, others clinging to their preconceived notions of vulnerability as weakness. Doubt began to rear its ugly head once more, taunting him. Standing abruptly, Marcus shook off the intrusive thoughts. Action was necessary. Reaching for his phone, he began a series of deliberate calls, reaching out to trusted colleagues who had shared their own vulnerabilities in leadership. He lined up informal discussions to gather insights. Each conversation felt empowering, reinforcing the notion that vulnerability was an essential trait they all shared. The threads connecting him to their experiences were becoming clearer. He found himself energized by their stories, each one further solidifying his understanding that authenticity invited deeper engagement and connection. He envisioned the audience, how they would lean in as he spoke, how vulnerability could become a collective discussion rather than an isolated journey, catalyzing shifts in their own approaches. Yet, as he drafted and revised, Marcus felt the weight of impending confrontation. The leadership forum would not only challenge him to present but also force him to confront his fears of being scrutinized. Could he handle the possibility of criticism? What would happen if, during the talk, he faltered, misstepped, or wrestled with his own emotions? He would have to prepare himself for failure as much as for success. That realization was daunting, yet liberating as the clock ticked closer to the forum date. Each day intensified his anticipation and anxiety. He thought about how the pilot had framed vulnerability as an endless journey, how daring it was to embrace the unpredictable. It was a mantra he would carry into his speech. Yet even as he planned, another voice whispered, deeper fears. What if he stood before the audience and couldn't he uphold his own mantra of authenticity? Doubts settled like an unwelcome mist, wrapping around him. Determined not to succumb, Marcus resolved to prepare not just his speech, but also himself mentally. He could not predict every outcome, but he could engage honestly with the moment when it arrived. Tomorrow, he would face the crucible of his own leadership, fully exposing himself to the audience while inviting them to join him on this journey. As he leaned back, letting the weight shift from his heart, he knew he was on the verge of something crucial. What awaited him at the forum, an opportunity for connection or a confrontation with his deepest fears? Would this be the moment where he either transformed into the leader he aspired to be or faltered under the weight of expectation? As the day of the leadership forum dawned, Marcus Carter stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie while staring into the reflection that felt both unfamiliar and resolute. Gone was the man shackled by doubt and judgment. Before him stood a transformed individual who had commandeered his fears and turned them into a source of strength. Today was not merely about speaking. It was a declaration of authenticity, a proclamation that he was ready to lead with unyielding transparency, a new paradigm of leadership where vulnerability was celebrated, not shunned. His heart raced as he stepped into the auditorium, the hum of voices creating a palpable energy that filled the air. Looking out at the sea of faces, he recognized his audience, a mosaic of fellow leaders, each grappling with their own challenges, aspirations, and the unassailable weight of expectations. This was the moment he had envisioned, a gathering not just to deliver a presentation, but to nurture a conversation that could potentially reshape narratives. As he approached the podium, he took a deep breath, centering himself. "Thank you for being here today," he began, his voice steady and sure. "What I'd like to share is not merely a polished perspective, but rather a journey, my journey through fear, vulnerability, and the unexpected power of embracing both." This line set the tone not just for his talk, but for the emotional arc he was ready to traverse together with his listeners. His anecdotes poured forth as he navigated the delicate balance of sharing personal vulnerabilities while illuminating their universal resonance. He spoke of the incessant doubt that plagued him, of the first time he faced judgment in the cockpit and how each hesitation rippled through his confidence. Every heart-wrenching moment crafted a foundation on which he would build his resolve that, as Marcus shared, he witnessed sparks of recognition lighting the audience's eyes. Laughter mingled with the murmurs of understanding as he articulated the fear of faltering, a burden they all shared, yet rarely discussed openly. He detailed how confronting his vulnerabilities allowed not just personal growth, but the permission it granted others to do the same. The narrative shifted from isolated experiences to a collective tale of unity and shared strength. Vulnerability isn't a destination we reach. It's a journey we embark on. A journey that invites connection, he declared, watching as heads nodded in unison. In that electrifying moment, he felt an invincible bond threading between him and his audience. He was no longer just an individual sharing a story, but a catalyst for an unfolding movement. As Marcus concluded his address, the room erupted into applause. The warmth of acceptance enveloped him not just for his words, but for the genuine resonance they had instigated. Stepping away from the podium, he felt a deep sense of pride swell within him. He wasn't merely sharing lessons learned. He was embodying them. Post-speaker engagements buzzed around him. Attendees flocked to exchange thoughts, expressing gratitude for his candor. Each interaction felt layered, like the unveiling of a new spectrum of possibilities. As they shared their own stories of confrontation with vulnerability, the nexus of connection deepened. Leaders who were once encased in armor now began to shed it, revealing glimmers of authenticity. "You've sparked a conversation that we desperately needed," one colleague offered, fervent enthusiasm shining through her words. "It's so refreshing to see someone willing to embrace both the struggle and the journey." As the evening wound down, Marcus stepped outside, the sunset casting a golden hue across the horizon, a metaphor for the culmination of a day steeped in revelation. The challenges he had faced, both internal and external, now felt like the forged steel of his conviction. He was not just a black pilot. He had become a voice for those seeking sanctuary in authenticity, a bridge that connected personal transformation to systemic change. In that moment, Marcus Carter realized he had not just transformed himself, he had ignited a flame of hope within others, crafting a legacy bound not by the shackles of judgment, but by the liberating power of shared stories and truths. The next chapter of his journey promised to be exhilarating, filled with opportunities to engage further, to inspire deeper, and to lead with genuine assurance. As he walked away, a sense of solid confidence grounded him. He could navigate the skies ahead not just as a pilot, but as a catalyst for meaningful change. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that could ignite your own journey of transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. You are a vital part of this mission. Comment your reactions and theories about this incredible journey and the impact of vulnerability on leadership. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion, because this is the moment to show your support and empower others. Don't wait even one more second to share.